Hello, welcome to the Western Association for College Admission Counseling Virtual College Fair. Thank you for joining us for this session, which is Navigating the UC and Cal State Applications. The session is for students considering applying to any of the University of California or California State University schools. Learn about what you need to complete the application and ask questions regarding the process and financial aid for 2021-22. Just a few housekeeping announcements before we get started. You can use the Q&A button on your screen, type your questions to our presenters at any time. Your cameras and microphones are off so the panelists can't see or hear you. There are many different sessions happening, including a 6x6 college session coming up later this evening. So make sure you sign up for more sessions if you haven't done so already at the same place you signed up for this one. This presentation is being recorded. It'll be available within about a week. It's drivescan.com/WACAC. All right, I've gotten the housekeeping stuff out of the way, so I'll step out of the way and turn it over to our presenters. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Russ. Welcome, everyone. We're about to get started. Hopefully everyone can see the screen share is up. All right, great. So we have about 30 minutes or so of presentation with a block of time at the end to do Q&A. If you have questions in between, we'll be looking at our slides and presenting, so we may not answer them at that point. We'll have a short break in between the two systems where we'll answer a few, and then at the end, we will address most of the questions. So welcome to Navigating the UC and the Cal State Applications. My name is Lisa Rubio. I currently serve as the Director of Admissions Operations over at Cal State San Bernardino, and we're a mid-sized campus, about 22,000 undergraduate students. So just a little bit about our area. There's several other campuses and we'll cover that next, but I'll have my next presenter also introduce.
My name is Jessica Green. I'm an admissions officer at UC San Diego, so we're part of the University of California system. Thanks for being here today. The University of California system, if you can see the screen right now, you can see the beautiful state of California. We have 9 undergraduate campuses that are listed here on the screen. So you can see the most northern campus is UC Davis, the most southern campus is UC San Diego. So the University of California system's mission really focuses on the fundamentals of teaching, research, public service, and each campus is really unique and they have their own distinct personality, student populations, and majors and programs. So they're all different. So although we're all part of the University of California system and we are all on the same admission application, we're all different and we don't share review with each other. So each campus does an independent application review of the application you might submit. So that's just a little bit about the University of California.
So this slide covers the 23 campuses of the Cal States. We go from Humboldt in the north all the way down to San Diego State in the south. We have very different campuses all in between. There's very small campuses like Cal State Channel Islands. It's a very private filling at a Cal State price. There's very large campuses, Cal State Northridge, Long Beach State, and then there's a lot of mid-sized campuses. There's different varying degrees across the campuses, but there are some commonalities in terms of admission that we'll go over. I want to urge you really to look at the campus website for the schools that you're interested in, because we all have a very unique layout in terms of campus life, living on campus, what's offered. So you really want to start there in doing your research and then branch out maybe to the main Cal State website. Okay, so let's talk about how you become admissible for a UC and a CSU. There's 2 graphs up here that are really covering the A through G pattern for high school. And it's a listing of courses that you do need to have completed with a C or better by the time that you graduate high school. So the year recommendations on the side are minimums. You can always do additional coursework and it will definitely help you in terms of GPA and making sure that you have all of your areas covered. But the minimum requirement must be met in order to be eligible. So if you go down the list, you're looking at US history and then world history and government, 4 years of English. The mathematics category varies because you're going to have recommended years, but the minimum that you'll need to go through at least is Algebra 2. And then we're looking at science with the lab, and this is one that does vary between the UC and the Cal States. The Cal States do require 1 physical and 1 biological. So you need to make sure that you're covering both of those. Your language other than English does need to be in the same language for the multiple year set. So if you take 1 year of French and then you switch over, you will have to complete a second year of one of them in order to meet the requirement. And then visual and performing arts, it can be different from each semester, but it does need to be at least a year. And then you'll have your college prep electives. Jessica, did you want to chime in on any of those?
No, I think the California in general has tried to make it as easy as possible for you. So you can see that the A through G is very, very similar. If you have any questions about A through G completion, I think Lisa's about to show a great resource on the next screen.
Okay, so the website listed here is how you find out if your high school courses are A through G approved. So if you're at a school in California, you're going to go over to the ucop.edu/A through G guide, and you're going to do a search. So that red box right there where it shows AG course list is where you'll click and you'll enter your high school name. You'll have to be a little bit careful about the year. You'll see that year block on top. So depending which year you took the course, you need to click the correct year. And then it'll give you a full list of everything at your high school for that year that's approved as an A through G. So if it's on that list, it's an approved class. So you can do a little bit of the research for yourself when you're adding your classes or after you've already taken them, just to make sure that you're following A through G patterns, that your courses are on there, that you're getting the correct credit if it's honors, AP, but you can look at that different high schools and get a good understanding of what's eligible. Okay, so let's talk about the CSU in general, in terms of large overarching admissions. So the Cal States are pretty unique because we have what's called impaction, campus impaction, and it falls into a couple of categories, but in general, impaction means that we have too many applications for spaces available. So we use, the impaction criteria for either a major or an area. Okay, so the 3 categories listed there, we'll admit using CSU eligibility. That's a non-impacted campus, minimum requirements, and you're eligible. And then there's a different type called campus impaction, where you may be impacted at the freshman or the transfer level, and you'll have to meet higher requirements. And then you can be impacted in all programs or across majors. Okay, the chart here is just listing right now for first-time freshmen. This is showing you just an example right now for all the campuses on the left that are using CSU minimum eligibility or considered non-impacted campuses. For instance, Bakersfield, Channel Islands, Dominguez Hills, East Bay. If you apply to any of those, you just need minimum requirements and then you're eligible for the campus. The campuses listed in the middle are impacted at the freshman level, meaning that if you're applying as a freshman, you're going to need to meet higher requirements and be from their local area in order to get admission to that campus. So it's going to vary based on the campus. You'll have to look at the website to see how impaction plays out. The campuses on the right column are impacted across all programs and majors. So regardless of where you live, which major you're applying to, you're going to have to compete with all other students and meet higher criteria in order to join the major.
So we had a question come in the Q&A. I was wondering if you could explain what impaction means just one more time. What does the term impacted mean?
Sure. So on the previous slide, I mentioned that being impacted overall means that we have too many applications for seats available. So a good example would be like if I'm in a classroom and I only have 50 seats and I have 5,000 students applying for those 50 seats, we'll apply higher criteria in order to bring in the students for those seats. So in general, think about it in terms of, too many applications and not enough seats. So you're being asked to meet higher criteria.
That makes a lot of sense. So the column that says admit using CSU eligibility, those campuses, are they less impacted? So
yes, those are considered non-impacted campuses. So you can meet the minimum eligibility 2.5, have your A through Gs, and be admitted to any major. Whereas a different campus, you may have to meet, a 3-point and extra A through G courses to meet whichever major you're applying to. So it'll vary. A lot of campuses do it a little bit differently. They'll use some rankings, they'll use multi-factor scores. So we'll definitely talk about that next.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, so your Cal State and UC A through G courses are going to give you your specific GPA as you're applying to us. It's a little bit different than your high school GPA. So if you're just looking at your transcript, what you have listed as high school GPA is not necessarily what we're looking at when we're reviewing you for college. So for the Cal States, 9th grade courses are used to give you A through G completion, but we don't look at your GPA for that year. So it doesn't count toward your overall CSU GPA. 10th and 11th grade is really where the bulk of your GPA is coming from, and it's in A through G courses only. If you have honors or AP, you will get a max of 8 additional points. Those are bulk are coming from 11th grade. There might be a few classes in 10th grade that are considered higher level AP that you can get an extra additional honors point for, but most of them are coming from 11th grade. And then in 12th grade, you have no grades when you apply your senior year. So it's really your 10th and 11th that we're looking at. Your 12th grade is just keeping you admitted. And then here's the minimum requirements for freshmen to a Cal State. So what we're looking for really is a combination of things. It's going to be completing all of your A through Gs by the time you graduate high school with a C or better. And then it's going to be a combination of your GPA in those classes with multi-factors. So because last year there was no SAT or ACT, the Cal State's instituted what's called the multi-factor admission score. And it's going to take a combination of items. So extracurricular activities, if you work, first generation college student. There's a number of different factors that are being used in your application and combined with your GPA and your A through G classes. That's going to give you a multi-factor admission score. And then every campus will use that differently in order to review you. Okay, the website to apply your senior year, when you get to October 1, the application will become available, and the website is called Cal State Apply. And here's the web link. You can start your application there early. You can enter course information. You can use the resources there to start doing some research, but the actual application won't open until October 1. And it typically closes November 30th of each year. So here's the important dates. The filing period is October 1 to November 30th. This last year, we did stay open until December 15th. You'll just have to kind of watch and see what's happening during that time. We've had a little bit of 2 crazy cycles with COVID and just extension in applications. So you'll just have to kind of pay attention. But in October, the application opens and you can start submitting. For your FAFSA, or your free application for federal student aid, we really want to have that in as soon as possible. So you can use prior taxes from your parents to file that same time as your application. And really it's the sooner the better. So that way campuses can get to work on offering some award letters. And then the EOP, or Educational Opportunity Program, that's specific to first generation college students who may need additional support. There's a separate application with letters of recommendation that are required. And the due date for the online application is November 30th, and then they give you about an extra 2 to 3 weeks to get in your letters of recommendation.
And since you were just talking about financial aid, I thought I'd also mention that students who might be filling out the California DREAM Act application, and maybe instead of the FAFSA, that also opens on October 1st.
Correct. And just a really quick note too, that's a good point, Jessica, about applications. When you're completing your application, if you're eligible for a fee waiver, you can find out as you're completing the application. So it's not a separate, fee or paperwork or anything that you have to do while you're in the application. You'll enter your info. You'll hit basically a submit button and it'll tell you yes or no if you're granted a fee waiver. And if you do, for the Cal States, it'll cover 4 campus applications. So that's good to know up front. So you know kind of where you're picking and choosing to apply, and it'll cover 4 of those. So in case you decide to join a CSU as a transfer student, it's a very different set of requirements. Your high school coursework no longer becomes part of your review. In fact, it's not looked at all. It very much becomes about how you do as a community college student. And so there's 4 courses that are key that are called Golden 4, and that's speech, English, critical thinking, and math. There's a very similar website, just like on the high school side, but it's called assist.org, where if you're at a California community college, you can enter your community college there and look at every transferable class. And that's going to be really important because you're going to need a combination of 60 transferable units plus your Golden 4 courses in order to be eligible to Cal State as a transfer student. So you'll have to start right when you get there. So that's very important to take note and really start working with your counselors immediately so that way you meet those requirements. Okay, and then just some resources for you all. Always start with your college center and your counselors. They really do have, the most up-to-date info. They have great connections at a lot of the schools. Most of the time they're alumni at different schools and they can give you, a lot of great experience, but start there and really get the information or do the appointments or the presentations that they have scheduled. That's a really great place to be. And the other one is that every campus also has their own recruitment office. So if you need to meet with someone, if you need to ask questions, you can always talk to an admission counselor that way and get some more information. Once you submit an application, then you can ask about your status. You can't necessarily get pre-admission counseling. Some campuses do, but you'll have to definitely check. And then just some web resources on there. Make sure you start with the calstate.edu website, but then visit your campus websites that you're interested in and start looking at the different majors that are offered, just what you would like to do while you're there, different housing options. There's really a lot to start considering. So you're going to want to look at each campus and see what they have available. So we can take a few questions now before we switch over to the UC.
Thanks, Lisa. There were some questions that came in. I don't know if you just want to scan them really quick and see if there's something you feel like would benefit the group. I think there were some questions about GPA calculation.
Let's see. So it says, yes, there's one. Are non-A through G courses also used to calculate GPA? No, they are not. So for instance, PE or ASB or just something that's not A through G approved for college prep, it's left out of your GPA calculation. So if you did really great, it's not going to help you. And if you did really bad, it's not going to hurt you. So just kind of be mindful of what you're taking and how to complete courses. One thing I want to mention very quickly, I know there's some questions in here about that. If you do not pass an A through G course, in order to replace the class, you need to make it up with the same exact course. So for instance, if you do not pass honors English or honors US history or AP history, you need to replace it with the same exact course, AP history. If you don't, if you fail AP history and you take regular history, then it's just averaged because it's a different course. So just be careful when you're looking at that. That's something important to note. There's a
I did
couple
get a
other.
question.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I got a question about if this is going to be recorded or not. So I just put in the chat box the link to the recording for later. And then we did get a few questions just about SAT, ACT. Do you want to walk us through what that's looking like for the CSU this year?
Sure. So the Cal State is test blind for the next term, meaning you can, in fact, complete an SAT or ACT and submit it to help you with placement, but it's not used for your admission. And so that's where we're using the multi-factor admission score instead. So yes, for the next term at least, there's no required SAT or ACT. You can certainly submit it if you have it, and we'll use that for English and math placement, but not toward admission criteria. And then let's see, let me grab, I think one more. One of them is asking, what are the GPA requirements for transfer students? And that varies across major and campus. So impaction is applied to transfers exactly the same way it is applied to freshmen. The only difference is they apply it through GPA. So for instance, you could be applying to Cal State Fullerton and be looking at criminal justice, and they will have, you know, a 3.2 minimum requirement. You'll have to do some research, where another campus who maybe is not impacted will take you at a 2.5. So you'll just have to see what major you're looking at in campus, and then it'll vary.
Well, Lisa, did you want to take another one, or I'll get started and then we can wrap up with some more questions. Maybe you can answer some in the background.
Yes, go ahead, Jessica.
Okay. All right, so I'm going to get started talking about the University of California system. I did have a question in the chat box asking me if is UC San Diego, University of San Diego, and San Diego State University all different colleges? Yes, and I think that that is truly confusing. So we're all different schools. So the UC San Diego is part of the University of California system, which we're going to be talking about today. The University of San Diego is a private school also in San Diego. And then there's also San Diego State University too. So we're all separate schools, which can get tricky when people start to submit financial aid or FAFSAs because they get confused. So make sure you send your FAFSA to the school you actually want to go to, so we can avoid a little bit of confusion later on. So the University of California, just a quick overview of application process and timelines. All of the undergraduate University of California campuses use the same application. So if you remember that map in the beginning of my presentation, there was UC Irvine, UC San Diego, UC Berkeley, UCLA, UC Riverside. There's 9 undergraduate campuses, and we all use the same application. So we all have the same dates and deadlines. So August 1st, the UC application will open up. So if you are a rising senior in high school or a potential transfer student for fall 2022, you're going to have access to the application about August 1st. Then you don't get to submit the application until November 1st, and you have 30 days to submit it. You have to submit the application by November 30th. So this is for fall 2022 admission for first year or transfer applicants. There are only a few campuses that do spring terms for admission, but most campuses only do fall admission cycles. So the next application is fall 2022. May 1st is the statement to say you're coming or not for first year students. And I skipped over a part of this. So in February, first year applicants get to know if they're February, March to see if they're accepted. March, April, transfer students will know if they're accepted. And then May 1st for freshmen, first year students to accept the offer. And then June 1st for transfer students if they would like to accept the offer. And there may be students who are placed on the wait list as well. So we do wait list too. So for first year admission requirements, just like the CSU, we're going to be looking at those A through G courses. So when we review your application, your GPA for the University of California is going to be your 10th and 11th grade weighted A through G courses only. So that is the GPA calculation that the UCs are going to look at for your application review. For fall 2021 admission, we did not consider SAT or SAT test scores as a factor in admission decisions. For fall 2022, there has not been a system-wide announcement yet, but multiple individual campuses have come out to say that they're also not going to consider test scores for fall 2022. So it's not a system-wide announcement yet, but a lot of campuses have individually come out. And regardless of any campus-wide announcement, we're all going to definitely not require them. So they won't be required of you no matter what. So there's a lot of factors in the UC review process. We do a holistic application review. So within that holistic application review, or multi-factor, there are multiple different things you might be looking at, like the rigor of your courses, special talents, maybe enrichment programs that you participated in. Did you work? I mean, working is a huge accomplishment and shows a lot about you as well. Or maybe you were a caretaker, or you translated for your family members. It's just a lot of things that make you you. So that's why we do multiple factors in the admission decision, including your personal insight questions. So for transfer applicants, there are some minimum admission requirements to hit as well. And I think I noticed that there are some people interested in the transfer route in the audience. Transfer is a great way to get to the UC and the CSU. So for a minimum transfer requirements for the UC, you have to have 60 UC transferable units. The website assist.org will help you understand what classes at the community college are UC transferable. That website will also help you understand what classes to the CSU are transferable. So assist.org is a great resource for transfer students. I apologize, my dogs are really excited for admission. But you have to have for transfer at least a 3.0 GPA, 60 UC transferable units. And then there is something we call the 7-course pattern, where you have to have 2 English classes, math classes, as well as some other courses in some different areas. So those are minimum requirements for transfer. Okay, so in addition to that, it is a comprehensive review process, kind of just what I talked about, with multiple different review factors. So there's a lot of contextual factors we're looking at, your personal insight questions, as well as academic factors. I wanted to go over a few pitfalls that we usually see when students are trying to fill out the UC application. One of them being the social security number. So if you don't have one, just put all zeros. It's okay. You don't need to have one to fill it out. You just keep going. You won't even have to put zeros. You don't have to do it. Your household and qualifying for a fee waiver. So just like Lisa was talking about the CSU application, the UC application also, your fee waiver is included in the app. So when you're filling out the application, you're going to answer questions in the beginning of the application in the household section, which are going to trigger at the end if you qualify for a fee waiver. So you're going to provide information about your family size, your income. Don't worry, none of this is being used for financial aid. It's really just to do that qualifying aspect of that fee waiver. Another thing that we see as common pitfalls is people, when they're trying to choose their majors on the application, they're having a really hard time, because each University of California campus has different colleges, different majors, different topics. And so I really encourage you to look online and do your research at each University of California campus's website to understand, well, what's the major I want and what's it named here, so that you can put in first choice and second choice majors on your application. So speaking of first choice and second choice majors, the University of California tends to suggest that if your first choice major has a capacity limit, and this is kind of a little bit what Lisa was speaking about too, some of our majors have capacity limits because too many people apply to those majors. So we can't admit all of those people into a specific major. So we have to cap enrollment on some of our majors. So we do recommend that if you're filling out the application and you see that one of the majors you want has a capacity limit, that you might choose a uncapacity limited major as your second choice major. Transfer students cannot be admitted as undecided. And then another pitfall is when you're filling out the application, making sure that you put all your high school courses under the high school section. And then if you've taken any college classes, that you put those under the college section. So you're going to report what high school you go to, and if you attended any community colleges, and enter that coursework in separately under each institution. So activities and awards is an area of your application to definitely look out for. You're going to let us know about awards, honors, work experience, volunteer experiences. You're going to be able to provide a title and then a short description. So really use this area to shine. Some people have non-traditional activities and awards. And with COVID, we've done a lot of things outside of our homes as well. So there's a lot of things you might just do in your house day to day that are activities that you participate in. Maybe you still play a lot of music, produce music. Maybe you make websites or build computers. Those are activities and things that you're doing in your spare time. So really focus in on, community involvement, leadership and growth. And then for scope and context, what we mean is describing your experiences. So use those word counts. Then we have our personal insight questions. For first-year applicants, there are going to be 8 questions. You can choose any 4 questions. And these are a way for us to get to know more about you. The maximum word count for each question is 350 words. And we're looking to understand who you are, your choices, your experiences. And a good tip is even to just write all of the personal insight question responses and then see which ones seem like really showing who you are. For transfer applicants who also submit personal insight questions, there's one required question you have to answer, and it's asking you how you prepared for your major. And then there's 3 optional questions. Well, they're not optional, but you get to choose whatever topic you want to speak to. So this is a few best practices for those personal insight questions for the UC application. So we would really recommend against using quotes or talking about other people in your essay, your personal insight question. Really focus on yourself. So use I statements. It is not an English assignment. So really treat it more like an interview. Like if I sat down with you for an hour, what would I learn about you? And you probably wouldn't be quoting Gandhi or anything like that. You'd be talking about who you are and your experiences. And these are really to give us context to understand who you are. So that would be a tip I would give you. So that PIQ, the personal insight question, your unique stories. And then the additional comments is really a place for context and clarification. There are 2 additional comment boxes on the UC application. One after the academic history section, where after you put in all your grades and courses, you can describe a few academic context. And then there's one after the PIQ section as well. So one after all your personal insight questions. So the academic history box is a really good opportunity. You've got 550 characters. It's not required, but that context can really help us understand who you are and your choices. So what is context? I know I keep saying that word. It's really the frame around your unique academic experience. So there's always things that happen to you, right? So why did you choose the classes you chose? Like what kind of school environment were you going through? I once visited a high school where they didn't have a roof for an entire year. That's something that we might want to know about. Are you in a non-traditional school environment? Do you have a break in attendance you want to explain? Do you have a grading scale you want to explain? These are really great opportunities to use the additional comments box. And then just letting you know, it's really for any situation, circumstance, or experience that doesn't appear anywhere else on your application. So truly, that PIQ additional comments box, you could really tell us anything. It's not a place to copy a resume or to put another personal insight question, but it's definitely a place to talk about unusual personal or family circumstances, maybe a learning disability. So really utilize those additional comment boxes in addition to the rest of the areas on your application. And I'll drop some of these resources in the chat box while we're answering a few questions. Really just some dates and deadlines that we can take a look at. So Lisa, did I get anything in the Q&A box?
We have lots of questions. Yes.
Okay. And then I wonder, I know it's 4:30. I wonder if we want to like combine or I don't know if I took up too much time.
No, I would say let's go ahead and take a few yours and then
Okay.
we can go through and see if there's any others. One of the questions is asking, will the UC schools look at your first semester of 12th grade grades and classes?
That's a good question. So your weighted GPA for the evaluation comes from your 10th and 11th grade A through G classes. Your 9th grade is important to us because it shows rigor. Your 12th grade is also important to us because it shows rigor and course choices, but we won't have the grades. And so most of the UCs will do the review process without your first term grades. There are some instances, it's really few and far between, but where maybe the application review is going on and they will be requested of you. But that's really few and far between. It doesn't happen a lot.
Can you answer, Jessica, if you know, what is the average GPA that you see applicants tend to have? And that might be more specific for your campus or
Yeah,
as a
so
freshman.
overall, the minimum requirement for California residents is a 3.0 in that 10th and 11th grade weighted GPA A through G classes. And the minimum requirement for non-California residents is a 3.4. However, most of our campuses exceed those minimum GPA requirements. So at least on my campus, the average GPA is closer to a 4.0 in the school context. So that's another piece to know. Most of the UCs read in the school context. So what that means is, at least at UC San Diego, 2 people read your application at least, and we review you in your current school context. So we're understanding what curriculum your school offers, you know, so how many A through G classes it has, or how many AP classes, or whatnot. And so we're looking at you in that context, because everybody's academic experience is very different. You know, not every school offers a ton of AP or even a lot of honors. So really it's about who you are in that school.
And then one other question, are the personal statement questions posted as of August 1st?
Yes, so I have heard nothing about those changing. They haven't changed in probably 3 years. So the personal insight questions are the same, and you can put a Google to it. I could probably put that in the chat box too. So if you're a upcoming senior or a transfer student, you're going to use the same ones. And if you're, you know, a sophomore in high school, even a freshman in high school, I just don't really foresee them changing a lot.
There's a question here that really does apply to both, and I think it's important to answer. A student is asking, for my 10th grade year, our school district decided to submit our grades under credit, no credit system. So will this affect my eligibility as opposed to schools who stuck with normal grading? So for the 10th grade and 11th grade year, I've seen a lot of students this year who had pass, no pass, or credit, no credit for 10th grade year. And that's really where we're starting to look at GPA, or they had that for 11th grade. And the GPA really only came from the 10th grade. So at least on the CSU side, it's a bit tricky because we can only calculate a GPA based on courses that are graded. So if you chose to do, or if your school district chose to do credit, no credit, the classes are weighed similar to your freshman year. It will count toward your A through G, but it won't give you a GPA in order to use. So we're really limited based on what courses you do have with a GPA. So just look very carefully at your transcript and see what you have. I had a number of students this year who their only GPA was their 10th grade fall, and then they really had nothing else. So, you know, it's just going to depend kind of where you were at the time when all the schools left and kind of when they switched over to that, and you can kind of calculate on your own.
Yeah, the University of California system, the same. You know, if you have a credit or pass grade, it can't be used for any GPA calculation, but at least we're doing the holistic review, reading in the school context. So all the other applicants from your school are going to be in the same situation, and we're going to notice a pattern of when that started to happen, as well as just reading that school context will be helpful. So it can't boost, you know, the GPA, but it can count towards rigor. So we're still using those classes to show rigor. Even if you got a credit or pass grade in an AP class, it's still an AP class, and it still shows rigor, and you passed it.
There's a question about, is the SAT, ACT suspension short-term or long-term or permanent? For the CSU system, they've only announced through the next cycle or the next academic term. I think it's right now just kind of based on current situations. So we expect at least one more update, you know, by the end of the academic year.
And then for the University of California, we had made a formal announcement that the fall 2021 and 2022 admission cycle would at least be test optional for sure in hard writing. And then 2023 and 24 in hard writing would be would go beyond that. So right now, we haven't made a formal announcement for fall 2022 being test free, but you definitely are not required to submit test scores, and the application is not looked at differently. And for the campuses that have already announced that they're test free, they're not going to use test scores, you won't be able to submit the SAT or ACT test scores as an element. So
I think we have time maybe for about 2 more. There's a question here. How does taking AP or other honors courses at another accredited high school outside of your own affect your GPA calculation and meeting A through G criteria? Regardless of where the courses are taken, if it's being used as an A through G, whether you submit it to your graduating high school and it's all on one transcript, or you're submitting several, most of the time students will transfer schools or take courses at another one, but everything will end up on their final transcript from the school that they're graduating from. So it's calculated along with everything else. If it happens to be, there was another question just about taking college coursework while you're in high school. If it's not placed onto your high school transcript, you'll just submit a transcript from the community college as well.
do you see anything else good in there?
Lots of questions about testing. There's one about, does applying with an undeclared major impact the admissions process? And that might be different for both the UC and the CSU. If we want to answer that one, I think on the Cal State side, some campuses that are fully impacted, that includes undeclared. So there's no benefit to choosing that. You'll still have to meet higher criteria. If it's not impacted across all majors and you choose undeclared, you'll still need to meet requirements for a more difficult major if that's your attempt. Like say you're really interested in nursing, because this is common. And some students or parents think, well, if I apply to undeclared and then just change to nursing, it'd be a lot easier. But there's checks along the way so that no student can enter nursing without meeting criteria. So regardless of how you enter the campus, you'll always be required to meet the major requirements. So you'll have to be careful. If you're really interested in a major, then choose it, because it's going to be important to get the advising, to meet with the college and to do everything with your major right up front. And if you really don't know, then choose undeclared, because there's undeclared advisors that will really help you sort that out. So if it's for a reason to choose undeclared, then go for it. It's not a workaround in order to get into a more difficult major.
I would agree with that last statement for sure. Selecting undeclared for the University of California system is not a workaround to get to another major. And each campus handles majors and the access to those majors differently. So I would really reach out to each UC to ask about their first choice, second choice major process, the likelihood of getting your first choice major, understanding the undeclared process as well. I did see a comment in here, someone asking about if students are kind of at a disadvantage because they have passing credit grades because of the pandemic. And I don't believe so. I think when we do that application review, we're really looking at all the factors. So I don't believe that there's any disadvantage. It's what happened, and it happened to multiple students and families because of a really difficult situation. So it looks like we have 1 minute left. I think I'm just gonna, I am gonna pop some contact information in the chat box if anybody wants to reach out. I know we didn't answer everything, but thank you all. Lisa, do you have any parting words too?
Thank you all for joining. We had a really great number of participants on here. I would say definitely reach out with more questions. And just start looking early, do your research, talk to your counselors. And most campuses, even though we may not be there in person, we're very available. Everyone is working and has their computers, and we're happy to help.
Awesome. Thanks, Russ. Do you have some
Thank
parting
you
words for
all.
us?
Well, yeah, thank you all for joining us. I want to thank our presenters for the great information. Thank all of our attendees for joining us for this session. When you close this window, there'll be a link to a very quick 4-question survey. We'd appreciate any feedback you can provide. Also, there's just one of many sessions being hosted. Be sure to sign up for more at the same place you signed up for this one. And within about a week, you'll be able to find this session's recording as well as all of the other session recordings at strivescan.com/WACAC, WACAC. Once again, thank you to our panelists for joining us and presenting great information. Have a great rest of your Monday. Take care.
Thanks. Bye.